Welcome to ROAR 2021. My name is Jim Anderson, and as SocialFlow CEO, I have the privilege of working with many of the world's best media companies, including the one you work for. We're excited to have you join our user conference, and in putting together an action-packed agenda, we've put the emphasis on usability. You can watch as little or as much as you want on the topics that most interest you. If you're like most people, you'll have this running in the background as you multitask, and that's just fine with us. Feel free to pause, rewind, or fast forward as suits you. Now let me kick off ROAR with a few thoughts about publishers and social media based on the decade that we've spent building SocialFlow. Now in Journalism 101, they teach us the who, what, where, when, why, and how. You may be familiar with this fellow, Simon Sinek, who happens to be an author. He wrote a book called Start With Why. And that's what I want to focus on a little bit today, the why. He's actually probably more commonly known for a TED Talk, which is quite notable. I want to say it's one of the top 3 TED Talks in all of TED's history. So it is quite popular. You've probably seen or heard about it. It actually turns out to be pretty good advice, starting with why, at least for running a business. I'll defer to others to comment as to whether it has any applicability to journalism or how journalists do their job. So I'm going to start with not the who, what, where, and when. I'm going to focus on the why and maybe a little bit on the how. So why SocialFlow? What is our why? Our why is that great content matters and it needs to be seen. We want to help publishers and media companies level the playing field. You see that tagline right on our website. Level the playing field with who? Well, of course, the technology platforms. I wasn't going to get into the who, but for these purposes, obviously, the technology platforms have a huge impact on your businesses. We do have a number of existing platform integrations, as I'm sure you know, with Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest. We're evaluating actually TikTok, particularly on the paid side, an important new platform. YouTube is not new, but we're always looking at that. And so in our product roadmap presentation, you'll hear a little bit more about some of that. And when we talk about these integrations, we typically look at 3 things. One is organic publishing, which of course is the core of how most of you use SocialFlow. Paid amplification, which has incredibly important implications to your business, particularly on the ad side, ad sales and subscription side. And then of course, analytics really applies to both of those. Some organic analytics, some paid analytics, and the blending of those 2 things together. So when we say level the playing field, no disrespect intended to those platform partners who are valued partners of ours, but a valued platform partner is a lot less significant than a valued customer. We work for you, and our job and our goal is to help you use these platforms to drive real business results, because great content matters and it needs to be seen. So let's take this a little bit further. We believe that technology matters. It provides greater productivity. It can make your job better and easier. And with software, a rising tide carries all boats. What I mean by that is the cost of software development gets spread across many clients. So what you know as SocialFlow and the SocialFlow application, which you probably see this login screen every single day, has been the result of tens of millions of dollars of investment, more than 150,000 hours of development time. We've made plenty of mistakes along the way, no doubt. Every software development project has its challenges and its mistakes and things it has to do over, but it's been honed with real world feedback. Every single day we compete in the marketplace for your attention, for your loyalty, which we very much appreciate and we certainly don't take for granted, because great content matters and it needs to be seen. So we've come a long way in the past decade or so. Remember the iPhone 1? This almost looks like a preschool toy now. It was incredibly revolutionary when we all first put it in our hands. It was really mind-blowing. Wow, a phone can be this good. But now you look at that compared to this and the iPhone 13, and it's just amazing how far we've come in a decade. It's had a profound impact on society and so many things that are outside the scope of today's talk. But really, as it relates to social media consumption, let's not forget how big of a deal the mobile devices and the iPhone in particular have been. And what we've seen in 2021 is this kind of breakdown. So mobile represents 84% of all the click traffic that we see coming through SocialFlow. We see billions of clicks and 84% of them coming from mobile devices. If you want to break it down between iOS and Android, you see there 49% iOS, 33% Android, that's the mobile, and then the desktop is the Windows and Mac together, about 16%. So we're very proud of the sheer scale of publishing that we're able to support through SocialFlow. Millions of posts every single month, billions of clicks, about 1 billion clicks a month is what we see, and then trillions in actual reach. So massive high quality publishing. And yes, I was saying millions, billions, and trillions, just to be clear. You didn't mishear that. That all suggests a certain set of features, and you start to understand where SocialFlow is going when you think in terms of millions, billions, and trillions. Automation is incredibly important. Repetitive tasks, how can we take these repetitive tasks that you end up having to do every single day and make them easier and better? Support for large teams around the globe. Here's an example. This is just a screenshot of an internal dashboard. You can see this client who's blinded has more than 1,000 users that have logged into SocialFlow in the past 30 days. I'd be willing to bet, unless you happen to be from this client, you don't have this many people. You don't have 1,000 people working on social media across your entire organization, much less the team you're working on. But just to give you an idea of the scale and how we think, we ultimately are really trying to help large distributed teams be able to be more successful. Doesn't mean if you have a small team that you don't matter to us, but just understand that it's all about how can we provide efficiency and ultimately create more value for you in what you're doing on social media. Things like intelligent groupings of handles. If you have multiple social properties, which of course you have multiple, but you may have dozens of social properties or even hundreds of social properties, how can we group those in ways that make sense? How can we then allow you to do more robust analytics and analyze those handles, cross-posting, recycling, all of those kinds of things across dozens or more of handles? I'm not going to go into the roadmap here. Coming up shortly, you'll get a roadmap presentation, and I encourage you to watch that because it'll go into more detail. But all of this really matters because great content matters and it needs to be seen. So I did mention the how, and I do want to highlight two things without going deep into the roadmap. One is taxonomy and tagging, which is a huge issue, I think, for all of us who deal with social media. So in the spirit of automation and trying to make things easier and better for you, every single link post that's made through SocialFlow is run through our taxonomy engine. And we have quietly surfaced the results of that on the single message report. You may or may not have seen that, but if you go into the single message report in SocialFlow, which you certainly have seen, I have to believe, and you may have noticed that we've got this IAB content categorization, media topic categorization, and keywords that have now quietly showed up on the single message report. That's just the first of many things you're going to see in terms of how we start to surface this. And again, remember, this is done in an automated fashion. Every single post you make, if it's a link post, is run through the taxonomy engine, comes back with a set of terms, and that will show up here on the single message report among other places. Completely separate from your own labeling and taxonomy and how you may be doing things. And it's really intended to augment what you're already doing. Or if you're not doing anything, now you've got a new taxonomy and labeling schema that's already in place with no extra effort from you. I also want to talk about advanced search, which doesn't sound particularly interesting. We all know how Google works, and the ability to search is almost table stakes and taken for granted now. We've had that for quite a while, and you're familiar with our messages report and the ability to go in and search there. That's not new. But what is new is, number one, you see these new content categories. If you don't see those, on the top right, you see the three little dots there. You can, in the messages report, make these three columns available: the IAB content categories, media topics, and keywords. Just what I was showing you on the single message report. That's now available in the messages report too. And you pair that with something that's coming out in a few weeks, which is an advanced elastic search functionality and the ability to say, I want to go in and search our content on sustainability. This is just a sample topic I'm picking. And I want to look at all the keywords, or maybe I want to look at the post title, or I want to dive into more of the details down below. Really advanced search that's very quick, very responsive, and gives you the ability to put your fingers on the right information quickly, easily, so that you can ultimately drive better results. So these are really important features. What we're doing on taxonomy, what we're doing on advanced search, they open up enormous possibilities for your chief revenue officer to sell more ads, for your chief marketing officer to sell subscriptions. And social is such a critical part of your user experience. It's really important to leverage that to grow your business, to grow your revenue streams, and maybe most importantly, to advance your career and to get your next raise and to get your next promotion. Tying social into those things is a great path to your personal career advancement. And the promotion and raise would be well-deserved because great content matters and it needs to be seen. So there's so many possibilities here that are opened up when we start thinking about what we're doing with the taxonomy and the search. When you can search by topic, across a dozen or more, maybe even hundreds of social handles. I'm going to give you an example. This is obviously not real, but just to illustrate the power. So let's stick with that sustainability example. You're familiar with typing that into a text box. And then imagine, okay, I want to understand posts on sustainability, and I want to know about their engagement. I want to know about their readership. Maybe I'm talking about reach there. I want to look over the past 7 days, and then I just want to go and I want to search. So you can imagine, we've all seen search results, so that's not particularly revelatory, but we're playing around with a number of different things. What if you were to take those search results and filter them down a little bit and sort them on a most engaging axis on the bottom here, the x-axis, and on the popularity on the y-axis. So think of the x-axis as engagement metrics and think of the y-axis as reach. And some of that is kind of obvious. Some of it is not, though. That's why we go ahead and do these searches and surface these kinds of things. So remember, we're on the topic of sustainability here. This was a financially oriented set of stories here. And you can see, okay, these are the images that go along with the story. So one thing you quickly realize is that when you type in sustainability and you do searches, you see a lot of windmills. And windmills, I guess, if you want to come up with an image that illustrates and demonstrates sustainability, that's a good one. But on the top left here, a very popular story that wasn't that engaging was about Hurricane Ida, happened recently, making landfall in New Orleans. And it's not that hurricane stories aren't necessarily engaging, but there was a lot of content about the hurricane, and any one post didn't generate a massive amount of engagement, even if it did get a lot of reach and a lot of exposure, because the hurricane was very important. You go down to the bottom right, which is you got a really high engagement story, but maybe didn't get as much reach or wasn't very popular. Well, it's a story about the Norway Sovereign Wealth Fund. That's a pretty specific niche topic. And it turns out that they want to put their money where their mouth is, and they're actually making investing decisions and making a climate commitment to how they actually put their money to work. And for financially oriented publications or people, that's a big deal. So it was really quite engaging and generated a lot of discussion. Of course, where everybody wants to be is the top right? I want to get a whole lot of reach and I want to get a whole lot of engagement. And this is an example of Finland's forests. Apparently, there's a real trade-off here about how you would best use your forest resources to help with climate change. Do you keep the forest intact as a carbon sink to absorb all the carbon, or do you use it as a renewable resource for lumber and things like that to actually promote a more ecological development, home construction, those kinds of things? And it's an interesting set of trade-offs there. And that kind of story generated a lot of popularity and a lot of engagement. And then the bottom left, we should just round out, the who cares category. No disrespect intended to the big four accounting firms, but when you see a story that says the big four firms pursue ESG work, which is environment, sustainability, government, and they're doing it both for image and profit, it's just not that popular, not that interesting a story. So again, nothing wildly revelatory in conceptual terms about looking at your social media content this way, but the ability to quickly put your fingers on it, sort it, organize it, filter it, visualize it, and that's what we were just looking at with that 9 block, ends up being really, really important. And when you think about doing that across not just 3 or 5 or 10 or 20 posts, but thousands of posts, it really is a very difficult, if not impossible, thing for you to do without technology, software, and automation. So finding what matters the most, that filtering, understanding relative performance, which story performed better than others. And yes, the absolute numbers may or may not matter to you, but just understanding relativity. I want to be able to plot things and understand what's performing better as it relates to engagement or reach or some other metric. And then ultimately making all that available to the right people inside your organization. Maybe even ultimately to your advertisers. This kind of insight is something that advertisers are really, really interested in as well. Because great content matters, and it needs to be seen. There's so much more I could say, but we have a user conference to get to, so I'm going to wrap up there. I want to thank you for joining us at ROAR 2021, and enjoy the rest of the show.